Hey my friends, this is my 60 days of doing yoga with Adriene review. That's right, I've been doing yoga for 60 days consecutively, and this is the video where I'm going to share with you what I have been noticing along this journey. If you've seen my 30 days straight of yoga with Adriene Review, then you'll already know what I noticed within those first 30 days. This is going to be revealing what I have noticed since then. If that's what you're interested in hearing about, then you are in the right place. That's coming right up here. If you saw either of my previous videos on my yoga journey, then you already know that I didn't just one fine day set out to do yoga multiple days consecutively and actually succeed. In fact, I had tried to set a routine of 30 days of consecutive yoga just to see what would happen. Many times, it was I think 4 or 5 times. So I failed a lot, and then I actually made a video on how I actually succeeded, so that if it's something that you want to do, that you can gear yourself up to succeed as well, not only in a yoga practice, but I believe the tips that I finally figured out that allowed me to succeed in this can help with a multitude of many different things that any of us might want to take on, because we know that they would make tremendous positive differences for ourselves in our life. What have I noticed now that I've been doing yoga every single day for 60 days? Well, I've noticed an increase in some of the benefits that I had already been experiencing, and I noticed some new things too. The first thing that I will talk about right now, let's look at my arms, for example. I showed that I was starting to get some curve in my muscles in my arms at the 30-day point. Yoga is powerful and amazing, and I mean, we've all seen yoga bodies, but the benefits, I feel, go so far beyond what the physical attributes are. I know that most people go for yoga because of the physical attributes as a primary focus, but let me tell you, my friends, there's other stuff within there. It's actually really the fundamental reason why yoga was brought into being in the first place, was not really the physical attributes. It's some of the other ones, which are so far more impressive in my mind now that I've been experiencing them, and I'm going to be sharing that with you right here. So don't go away. Stay with me. Give this a like if you like what you're seeing so far. If you're kind of impressed here, I'm kind of impressed. And also in this second set of 30 days, so day 31 to 60, I actually didn't really keep up with that many of my yoga practices with a lot of poses that would actually target my arms all that much. I actually felt the need to stretch a lot more than I felt the need to do body strengthening. So I wanted to put that out there too, because I believe that my arms actually still have a little bit more curve to them. And a lot of the sessions I did between day 31 and day 60 was a lot of stretching where my arms weren't really bearing my weight that much. I did do some where that was part of it, but not that many. I really felt a lot of tightness in my body, and I was still undergoing a lot of stress. And what I did, and what I would encourage you to do if you take on a yoga practice, or really anything that you really want to implement on a daily basis in your life, is always do your best, put your best foot forward, but also be gentle with yourself when you need to be. Back off it a little bit in intensity if you need to, and trust that that is actually what is serving you the best. Sometimes we psych ourselves out and we'll make ourselves wrong if we're not hitting it to what we perceive at one point as the most hardcore way of going about it, and therefore maybe the most effective. And then sometimes if we genuinely need something else, we sometimes will then think of it as being less than, but it's not, because stretching is important too in the case of yoga. If you need flexibility, sometimes you really need flexibility, and I felt in this second set of 30 days that I really needed stretching a lot more of the time than I needed strength building, and so I honored that. But what I can tell you is that everywhere in my body is improving still. All of the muscle tone that I talked about in my 30-day review is not only still there, but growing stronger. And I have noticed some incredible benefits beyond the physical, my friends. And now this is all important because we all want to look our best. We all want to feel our best. And I mean feeling our best physically, but we also want to feel our best mentally and emotionally too. And that's where I am really impressed by what has happened. I was impressed as it was. I was impressed and noticed differences in my state of being, in my mind and emotional states when I was just doing yoga maybe 2 to 3 times a week. I would still notice differences. When I started doing it every day, even within the first 30 days, I noticed a more even keeled, what's the word? It was just, even though if I did it every 2 to 3 days, I still felt calmer. And I would say that I probably was still calmer in between those days too, than if it was within a span of time I just wasn't doing yoga at all. But what I noticed when I started doing it every day is that my calmness and my centeredness was just building and building and building and building and building and building and building very gradually but very steadily. And then there weren't really the in-between days, so I was just staying in a better place and in a better place and in a better place and in a better place. That has continued to grow. I'm not surprised by that. I've done meditations. I've established a meditation practice years ago. I started that in a similar way. In terms of my yoga, what I thought about doing when I went into day 31, my mind got a little bit involved. As I told you in video 1, I was keeping my practices mostly between the 17-minute point and the 23-minute point. A few were shorter, a few were longer, but most of it was within that range. When I came to day 31, I kind of thought, well, maybe I should just make them longer now. But then I kind of checked in with myself to feel, well, am I really in resonance with that? And the answer really was no. Like, I could feel the conflict in here. And so I knew that I would be best off continuing forth with those parameters in place until I naturally wanted to do it longer, which is something that I used for building a meditation practice. And again, I can discuss that if anybody wants to know about it. So I decided at that point, I chose at that point to continue on with the 17-minute to 23-minute time frames and trust my body to pull me into longer time frames when it was ready to. And I also thought that by sticking with the shorter time frames, I not only wanted to see what it would do for me, for my body, on top of the first 30 days of keeping it confined in those time frames, but I kind of wanted to be able to tell other people, like, hey, you don't really need to do this for a long time each time for it to have really tremendous results. Because I wanted more people to be able to feel like they could get their head around maybe doing it on a daily basis too. All right, now stay here because I have some more amazing information coming up. Some of the best stuff is yet to come, so stay right here. And by the way, if you've liked anything that you've heard so far, give it a like, make a comment below. Now, something tremendous. I don't know if I made this really clear in my 30-day video. I did mention that before I had started, I was averaging about one really bad migraine every week. And I knew that I needed to figure out how I was going to work around that so that I wouldn't get knocked off track with establishing a perfect record of 30 days of yoga with no missing any days. I didn't want to miss any days. And so I don't know if I really made this clear, but in the first 30 days, I actually only had one headache, and it actually wasn't that bad. And I do believe that it was because of doing yoga that happened. I don't know if it was because of just the physical attributes or if it was because I was getting calmer or maybe a combination. I'm not really sure. Stay right here because some of the best stuff is coming up. I think it's all good, but anyway. But in 60 days, I have only had one migraine that landed me, I think, in bed for the day. It did. So I went from one a week that was really vicious. I wouldn't always be landed in bed, but I basically was cut off from doing anything. I couldn't be on my computer, I couldn't really drive, I couldn't really do anything. And sometimes it would be so bad I would really be in bed. So in 60 days I had one of those instead of one migraine a week. And I've had, in the whole 60 days, I've probably had maybe 3 headaches that were like there, but not really that bad. And I didn't take anything, and I was able to do things. I was able to work, I was able to drive. It was annoying because it felt a little uncomfortable, but it wasn't debilitating. And This is a gigantic improvement, and I think I would just be really missing the mark if I thought it was just a fluke, because I've consistently had problems with migraines, and I really was getting about one a week for months before I started the yoga. And at one point, a couple years ago, I was actually getting 3 to 4 really bad migraines every week, and that was going on for months. So I wanted to share that with you because that's huge for me. I also have experienced a lot of neck discomfort and pain at times since I was about 20 or 21. And that was even before I got rear-ended and gotten in an accident. So I don't think that that really helped matters much. And I would say that in the first 30 days, as I mentioned, it did lessen. Now, some of the food choices I'm telling you about, when I take those hardcore, those alone can knock the pain practically all the way out. Like it'll be gone for most days and then there a little bit on some days. So again, that's why I wanted to keep those food choices a little bit in the same range as I had already been on and not take them all the way up, because I wanted to see what yoga basically alone, without really kicking those foods into high gear, would do, so that I could bring that information to you. And of course, what's working for me may work a little differently for other people, but I think that there are a lot of similarities that most of us really could benefit from both of these aspects. And I know I haven't really gone into the food stuff yet. I've been telling you guys I would make that video. I actually had made it like 3 times, but I didn't like how they came out, and I couldn't even edit them to save them, so I have to do it again one day. It's just very time consuming, but I do want to bring that information to you. Okay, so another thing that became really noticeable within, I would say probably the last couple of weeks, so maybe like 6 weeks into this out of the 8, basically 8 weeks of the 60 days, okay, around 8 weeks, is that, as I mentioned in my video where I explained how I strategized to help really support my being able to succeed in doing it every day, one of the strategies was to do it at the same time each day, except that I knew that there were going to be a couple days a week I wouldn't be able to do it at those times, and then I had a backup plan for that. So what happened in the second set of 30 days, so day 31 to 60, is that I was beyond those 2 days where I really couldn't do it in the morning, which is the time I picked for myself. I started to get a little bit more lax in my time frame within 30 to 60 days. I didn't mess up. I didn't miss any days by doing that. But sometimes I was just getting a little bit more like, well, I could do it in the morning, but I should go out and do this gardening thing real quick before it gets hot. Or I should go do this or go do that, and then I'll do yoga. And I was getting a little bit mad at myself after this was kind of going on for a little while, because I was starting to feel like I was being a little bit sloppy at a point. So I started to kind of mentally chastise myself, which is really not helpful. I mean, it can be helpful to a point if you don't beat yourself up to the point where you just give up on it. If you kind of just correct yourself and modify and bring yourself back in gear to a higher level, that can be good. But I think myself and any of us can sometimes take things too far and condemn ourselves to the point where we just are kind of like, oh, forget it. I'm just not even going to do this anymore. But what happened, in a way, I ended up really glad that I actually did that, because I hadn't noticed this in the first 30 days. And I don't know if it was just because the practice still needed to build more, because these internal changes that you get and these calmer states of mind and emotions, they continuously build, and you also can become more perceptive, more intuitive as your whole state of being calms down. You can notice more things that maybe escaped you before. So I don't know if it's just that they escaped my notice within the first 30 days, or if the results just hadn't built enough for them to be noticeable. But what I ended up noticing, and my other half noticed this too, when I told him about it, he's like, yeah, I've noticed this too. What I noticed, my friends, is that on the days I did it in the morning, I would get up and I would do a couple hours of work. I mentioned that in that other video. Like, that was consistent. I did that every morning. But on the days I followed through with doing the yoga right then before I did anything else, my whole entire day would go better. Each day felt like it had more space, almost in a way like more time. Everything I did was calmer and it felt like it was more in a flow. Whereas on the days I just randomly put the yoga in later, the days would feel kind of disjointed and they would almost feel like not really much got done, even though I'd be running around all day, but it had more of a disjointed, scattered feeling. And what was interesting is that my significant other had told me that, like, he actually labeled all this. He said, yeah, like the days feel like they have more space. I mean, he was actually verbalizing this before he even heard me. The days feel like they have more space, and it was changing his days too. Now that part isn't completely surprising. I had taken some courses at a place called Landmark Worldwide, and they base their courses on quantum physics, and I also think there's a lot of psychological studies that might go into it, but I know quantum physics definitely. And they talk about how we can use our minds and our focus and be in integrity to create things in our life, and how we can hold a space for things. And they do talk about how you can hold a space for other people. And so a lot of times when you are in a relationship or in a family structure, one person is usually holding the space that the others are kind of falling into their energy a lot of the time. And sometimes it'll shift. Sometimes someone else might kind of step forward and they might end up holding the space. But anyway, he was noticing that his days were going better too. That he was feeling like he was getting more done, and in a much more smooth way and an easy flowing way than on the days that I would do yoga later on. So, and he wasn't doing yoga. He's still not doing yoga. But it's almost like I'm doing it for both of us. So everything is just calmer and better. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, I thought I would share that because I think it's incredibly fascinating. So I will definitely be back to share with you what's going to happen in the next set of 30 days, because I am definitely keeping on with keeping on, and I encourage you to consider maybe doing your own yoga practice, or really anything, even like Tai Chi, or any of those things that are really calming and almost like they kind of help calm your mind, almost like a meditation at the same time as you're doing this gentle physical activity. It helps your body, but it goes so far beyond that. So I really recommend it. It's good for our health. Movement is life, my friends. I've caregiven for too many elder people. It started at way too young of an age. I shouldn't have even had to see some of the things that I've seen. And it really kind of did a number in my head. But in a way, I'm kind of grateful. I still kind of wish I didn't have to have experienced what I had. But in a way, I'm kind of grateful because I saw what happened to a multitude of people when they just didn't keep moving. And movement is life, and that's all I'm going to say about it right here. I may share more in videos ahead about what I have seen, not to be in a downer kind of a way, but kind of like to light a fire, because it has lit a fire under my rear end, I'll tell you that, because I've just seen things I don't want to live, and that's the only way that I can make something good out of what I've experienced. So let me know if that's of interest to you, and let me know what you thought about this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, or a thumbs down if you didn't. Subscribe and all that stuff if you want, and I will look forward to seeing you here again soon.